The day Kobe Bryant scored 81 points, January 22, 2006, against the Toronto Raptors, is so legendary in NBA history that it still feels incredible even now. But before diving into every detail of that game, it's worth recalling the context surrounding both Kobe and the Los Angeles Lakers at the time. The 2005-2006 season was only the team's second after Shaquille O'Neal's departure, and the Lakers were still restructuring following the dynasty that had earned 3 straight titles in the early 2000s. Kobe, long regarded as the second pillar of those championship teams, now shouldered the responsibility of leading a transitional roster on his own. The 2005-2006 Lakers weren't loaded with stars. Around Kobe were players like Lamar Odom, Smush Parker, and Chris Mihm, competent but inconsistent pieces. Phil Jackson had returned as head coach, hoping to replicate the success he enjoyed with Kobe and Shaq. However, with O'Neal gone and the roster young and uneven, questions loomed about whether Kobe could carry the team to the playoffs and produce a respectable campaign. Kobe himself was having an explosive individual season. Already known as one of the NBA's premier offensive talent, he was hitting a scoring peak in 2005-2006, stringing together multiple 40 or 50-point performances. Yet the team's inconsistency remained a problem, and on many nights, whether the Lakers won or lost seemed almost solely dependent on how well Kobe played. Critics questioned if he was forcing too many shots and playing too individually, and many analysts doubted this roster could make a serious playoff run. Then came January 22, 2006. The Lakers hosted the Toronto Raptors at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Led by Chris Bosh, the Raptors weren't considered a powerhouse, but they had capable players like Jalen Rose and Morris Peterson. Nobody expected the game to become historical right from the tip-off. If you talked about epic point totals back then, Wilt Chamberlain's 100 points in 1962 naturally stood out as an untouchable record. Even legends like Michael Jordan had never come close to hitting triple digits. Kobe's name occasionally popped up in discussions of who might get near that mark, especially after he scored 62 points in just 3 quarters against the Dallas Mavericks a month earlier, only to be benched for the final quarter because the game was already in hand. His 62 points in 33 minutes sparked questions about how high he might go if he played an entire fourth quarter. Could he crack 70, maybe even 80? January 22nd would be the perfect night to find out. Interestingly, the game didn't start well for the Lakers. In the first half, the Raptors were in control, opening up a double-digit lead. Los Angeles struggled on defense, allowing breakaway plays and easy buckets. Kobe had a decent start. He put up 26 points in the entire first half, but overall, the team lacked consistency. At one point before halftime, Toronto's lead ballooned beyond 15 points, and the home crowd grew restless, worried they might be headed for a loss. Returning from the halftime break, Kobe's mindset seemed to shift. It was as if a sense of urgency propelled him to take command more forcefully. He ratcheted up his defensive effort, going after steals and moving with greater intensity. On offense, he decided that if the Lakers were to get back into the game, he'd have to ramp up his aggressiveness. Mid-range jump shots, drives to the basket, three-pointer. No matter the approach, the ball just kept dropping. One by one, those baskets changed the game. The third quarter ignited the spark that turned the night into something special. Kobe started hitting shots in rapid succession, from contested jumpers to breakaway dunks after stealing the ball. As time passed, it became obvious he'd entered a zone, that rare mental state where nearly every shot seemed destined to go in. He was hogging most of the offensive possession, sometimes facing double team, but it made no difference. The shots fell. Even TV commentators began asking, will he reach 50? And if he keeps going, maybe 60. The Staples Center, initially subdued due to the early deficit, was slowly waking up. Excitement began to crescendo with each made shot. That third quarter shifted the momentum, allowing the Lakers to not only erase the deficit but also surge into the lead. By the end of the quarter, Kobe had already surpassed 50 points, and fans began to wonder how high he could go. If the main goal had initially been just to win, as the clock ticked down and Kobe's point total soared, it grew obvious this wasn't going to be just a normal game. He was on the brink of something extraordinary, perhaps historic. In the final quarter, unlike the blowout over Dallas the previous month, the Lakers couldn't afford to bench him. Toronto was still within striking distance, so Kobe stayed on the floor, maintaining his offensive aggression. By now, the Raptors were fixated on trying to contain him. Double teams were constant, but to no avail. He slithered through traps, found space for step-back jumpers, and kept scoring relentless. Every successful shot caused the Staples Center to explode, as if it were the playoff. The crowd sensed history in the making. When Kobe passed the 60-point mark, euphoria gripped the stand. Then he cracked 70, a threshold that only a handful of players in NBA history had ever reached. Fans were on their feet, the building vibrating with each field goal. Time and again, TV cameras caught the astonished expressions of the commentators and the Lakers bench. Even more remarkably, Kobe showed few signs of fatigue, despite carrying the team's offense throughout the second half. With just a few minutes left, he soared past 75 and rapidly hit 78. People could hardly believe what they were seeing. Could he reach 80? It was a number unseen for decades. Even Michael Jordan never topped 69. The crowd, fully aware of the moment's significance, roared with every bounce of the ball in Kobe's hand. Then, with around 90 seconds left in the game, Kobe sank free throws that brought him to a neat total of 80 points. By this point, the entire arena was on its feet. Another made shot took him to 81, setting off a volcanic eruption of noise at Staples Center. With the victory assured, Phil Jackson subbed him out in the dying second, and the place went wild like a championship celebration. Teammates mobbed him, Raptors players stood in awe, and fans roared as if they'd witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime event. The final score was 122-104 Lakers, with Kobe alone accounting for 81 of those points. That individual total was the second highest in NBA history, trailing only Wilt Chamberlain's fabled 100-point outing in 1962. The reaction was immediate and widespread. Interviewed post-game, Kobe expressed a mix of joy and amazement, but also reiterated that the team's win was the main objective. Even so, that night etched itself permanently into the record book. One player, essentially without major help, had transformed a likely loss into a resounding win while hitting an almost unimaginable scoring mark. If anyone still doubted his offensive brilliance and killer mindset, this performance silenced them once and for all. Technical breakdowns of the game revealed Kobe's offensive versatility. He connected on long-range shots, mid-range jumpers, dunks, and layups, and he earned numerous trips to the free throw line, a full repertoire on display. The Raptors defenders tried everything in vain. Some possessions saw him pivot and fake just to gain the smallest sliver of shooting space. Still, the ball found the net. Toronto's head coach, Sam Mitchell, later admitted he'd attempted every scheme possible, short of fouling Kobe before he even touched the ball. In time, that January 22, 2006 date came to signify not only a magnificent personal milestone, but also a vital piece of Kobe's lasting legacy. If Michael Jordan had his flu game, Kobe Bryant had his 81-point game. As the years passed, the night took on an almost mythic air, especially when you looked at the league's single-game scoring records and saw, number 1, Wilt's 100, and number 2, Kobe's 81. For an entire generation that never witnessed Chamberlain's era, Kobe's masterpiece was the closest they ever got to a superhuman scoring display in modern time. This performance also had a ripple effect on Kobe's broader career narrative. When he led the Lakers to 2 championships in 2009 and 2010 without Shaq, many recalled the 81-point game as proof he could carry a franchise. The feat, often cited alongside his 5 NBA titles and even his Academy Award for the short film Dear Basketball, stands as an iconic testament to the Mamba mentality, his unrelenting drive to compete and win. Even now, when lists of NBA's greatest individual performances surface, Kobe's 81-point night remains near the top. Some argue this display was as remarkable as Wilt's 100, given it happened in a modern era of more sophisticated defense. But it wasn't just the giant number, it was the dramatic fashion in which he spearheaded a comeback for a struggling Lakers team. The final 122-104 scoreline doesn't fully capture the second-half turnaround powered almost single-handedly by his offensive brilliance. Over the years, the 81-point game has been a consistent talking point whenever players approach 50, 60, or even 70 points. Yet nobody has quite managed to match Kobe's haul. Perhaps that's part of why it's so revered. Ultimately, 81 has become synonymous with an elusive offensive zenith, scarcely imaginable in the modern NBA. For fans who were there, the atmosphere remains indelible. In those last minutes, every Lakers possession felt monumental. When Kobe held the ball, the entire arena stood in anticipation, fully aware they were witnessing the forging of a legend in real time. And when he finally hit that 81, the ovation was staggering. Teammates crowded around him, and although he looked exhausted, he raised his arms in triumph. It was a personal achievement that morphed into a shared moment of celebration among fans, the organization, and the entire NBA community. In the end, the day Kobe Bryant scored 81 points went beyond statistics alone. It was the perfect marriage of talent, competitive instinct, resolve, and pure entertainment. One of the most jaw-dropping nights the basketball world has ever witnessed. It was forged by an athlete so driven he seemed to will the ball into the hoop. That's why, even years later, his performance against the Raptors still echoes as one of the greatest individual displays the sport has ever seen. An unforgettable reminder of the night the Lakers' number 8, who later became number 24, immortalized his place among the greatest scorers in history.